Nicki Pike, life as dot 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 with labels. Nicki has been had labels put on her all her life through her divorce. Her mother passed with dementia shortly after her brother didn't take it well, passed as well. Other horrible traumas have happened to her. She's able to get it. She's able to turn it around. She's very inspiring. She wouldn't like that label if I did. If I gave it to her, but I will call her brave. I will call her inspiring. I really enjoyed talking to Nicki Pike. Her podcast, like I said, life as dot dot dot. What she did. You learn about the little green drink that she has every day that helped her to motivate her. Her take on discipline is a very interesting one. I'm going to say it's the first time I've ever heard it. A very interesting take on what discipline has done with her decisions and her choices in her life. Really enjoyed this conversation with Nicki Pike. I know you will as well. Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. I really, really enjoyed learning about you, listening to your podcast, and you're doing some remarkable things, Nicki. What is there ever a good time for labels for people?
I don't know if I have an answer for that question. I think that sometimes labels do help us, and I think sometimes labels hurt us. So I guess the short answer would be yeah, maybe there is a good time sometimes for labels.
You described when you hired somebody to talk to, how they asked you who you are, and you weren't able to answer for over a year, I believe.
It was closer to 2 years. She asked if I
Mm.
stripped away the labels that, society had essentially given me or other people had placed on me, like mother, suddenly single mom, divorced, mortgage broker, all of these external things that described who I was, but they really had nothing to do with who I was. And she wanted me to strip away those labels and find out who Nicki the person was. And I didn't know who I was outside of those things for a really long time.
Very interesting. And you go into great detail. Your mother had passed, your brother had passed, divorce, so many things that happened to you and your family, and some of the really ugly labels were put onto you by friends, peers, neighbors, etc., and how you're able to fend them off. It's incredible and inspiring.
It's funny, I keep hearing the word inspiring, and I do not think of myself as that, and when I
Mm.
look back on the last few years and people keep saying, "Thanks so much for sharing, you're an inspiration," and, oh, I'm gonna actually just get rid of that real quick. I thought I muted that, but I didn't. Yeah, I don't it's not a word that I consider myself as. And so when I look back in the last few years, I really see the dark places I went to. I see a lot of the I don't like the word negative, but just a lot of the negative, a lot of the gloomy, the dark, the I wasn't in a great place and other people see the inspiration.
Yeah, because you've you've been through so much, and you started journaling. You mentioned you're doing this podcast where you're talking about it, you're interviewing others, but very easy for a lot of these things to happen to people and for them to just kind of hide in a corner and maybe get some help and that's it. But you turn it around and help others with that, or you talk openly about it. You interview others. That in itself is inspiring because now you're part of a tribe. People feel they're part of a tribe.
I think that's when I started my sharing journey, I was journaling, I was talking to therapists, I was doing all the things, but it didn't feel like it was enough for what I needed. So the
Mm.
start of my sharing was completely a selfish motivation. And I just started writing on my personal Facebook page. And it was like I was writing a blog about what it was like with my mom and her dementia when she was first diagnosed. And it wasn't all the time. It would be, when we hit a roadblock or something kind of major happened with her diagnosis and so on. And I started to get a lot of comments. And then I started to get people direct messaging me saying, "Thank you so much for sharing. I've been through this personally, or my spouse has been through this personally, or someone that I know has been through this. And it's such a terrible disease. And hearing your words and it really started to make an impact for other people, and to the point that I had Nurse Next Door as a national company that does home care, and they reached out to me and asked if they could start sharing my words on their national page because
Wow.
they had, you know, people I'm kind of that sandwich generation where I'm raising my daughter and I was taking care of my mom, and so it's tricky. It was not easy. And yeah, again, as everything happened, more and more people just kept reaching out and saying, "Thank you for sharing. You're really helping me." And I realized it wasn't selfish to share. It was actually helping other people just as much, if not more, than it was helping me.
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. And these days there's so many things, but life has a tendency to pile on. And um, what should, I mean, let's talk about what you did and what you had some regrets. You said you probably shouldn't have fought so hard with the Alzheimer's, with the dementia, and you had some regrets on how you handled that. And what should people do when they're faced with such, trauma like that?
I the word regret's a tricky one for me because
Mm,
I don't know if I regret anything that I did. I did the best that I could in the moment. And looking back, are there times where I wish that I had I don't even know what I wished I would have done different because
mm,
again, I did the best that I could in the moment, and obviously I didn't know my mom was going to die that quick. It was very quick for her. And I thought I had years left to
right.
process and to spend with her. And not that it was fun spending that time with her, but I could still go see her. I could still hold
Mm,
her hand. I could still talk to her, even if she couldn't talk to me. And losing her, I think that was the biggest thing. Like the weekend she passed a Sunday morning about between 5 and 5:30 a.m. My daughter and I were supposed to go see her on the Saturday the day before, but it was foggy out. It was spring. I'm in Canada. I'm in Alberta. We don't have great weather. And it was foggy and my mom was about 45 minutes away in the hospital she was in, and I just said to my daughter, "You know what? It's pretty foggy out. The roads aren't great. Why don't we go swimming today and we'll go see Nanny tomorrow?" And then we got the phone call
mm.
Sunday morning that she had passed. And so there was definitely guilt. I would say more guilt than regret is what I felt after my mom. So what would I say to someone? Oh, it's easy to say this, but you can't let the guilt consume you. You have to recognize you did the best you could in the moment.
Yeah, very good. I thought at one point you said something to the effect, and maybe I have it wrong, that once your mother was diagnosed, you decided both to kind of attack it hard, where you shouldn't have done that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think what I meant there is, my mom really fought it. So
Mm,
dementia to her was a death sentence, and her biggest fear, she fought it. She would not accept the diagnosis of dementia.
I see.
And she said when she finally accepted it, she broke down and all she worried about was me and my daughter. And she
Right.
said, "I won't do this to you and Jordan. I won't. I will not let you watch this." And so she was, as moms are, she was just worried about us. I don't know if I fought the diagnosis. I fought our medical system, is what I
Mm,
fought,
mm.
because the medical system was not, it doesn't work in our favor. And again, I'm in Canada and we're supposed to have this fantastic universal health care. And there are lots of great points about it, but it was not fantastic.
Really. That's horrible to hear. And I have some of the some of the labels that have been put on you, and I don't even want to read the list because they're not nice. And like, how did you know that these were put on you? I mean, difficult, high maintenance, crazy, just terrible things. Nikki, how did you know that these labels were assigned to you?
Well, I heard them a lot,
Uh,
and it was generally the same person and then similar people in my life. So it was a lot of it was my ex-husband, and I haven't said that out loud very often because we are
mm,
co-parenting and I don't want to make the relationship
right.
difficult or any more strained than it needs to be, but that's the truth. And in looking back, it wasn't me that was crazy and being
Mm,
difficult. It was me trying to say this is what I need in our marriage, or this is what I need in this relationship, using different examples. And the other person not being able to provide that for to me, and then flipping it around and saying, well, you're crazy for thinking that, or you're just being difficult, or you're so emotional. Or so if I got upset about something that they had done, then suddenly I was emotional and I was crazy and I was difficult and I was high maintenance. And it was like, no, I'm expressing how I'm feeling based on your actions. And so it took me a really long time to be able, and therapy, to be able to step back and say, how much of this is my behavior? How much of this do I own?
mm.
And how much of this do they own? And of course, I can't control what anybody else accepts as their own behavior. I can only control my own. So I did a lot of work around my contribution to being labeled to those things. And as I worked through that, it wasn't all me.
Yeah, certainly not. And it's you could tell you're in a much better place because the way you prefaced that answer was, I don't want to, I'm still he's the father of my daughter, and I don't want to say negative things. And That's definitely a good place to be. All too often I hear, you know, ex parents that are separated or divorced say negative things about each other in front of the children, then the children are questioning, that's my parent. That must mean I'm bad. It's a bad trend.
It is a very, and it's not always easy because we're
Mm,
divorced for a reason.
right.
And I've even caught myself, I don't believe I've ever badmouthed him to my daughter, but I've caught myself saying things that could be interpreted exactly how you just said. So I may
Mm,
not mean them in a certain way, but I have to be so careful in anything I say. Like even today, he just let us know that he's sick. And so our daughter was supposed to go to him, what went through my head was, I wish you would have given me some more notice. And I almost said it out loud.
mm,
But to a child, that's me saying something bad about her
negative.
dad.
Yeah.
Right. And so I caught myself and it was like, no, I can't even say that.
And the other point I want to bring out with your response is, gaslighting. These people that are close to us and the ones that manipulate love to gaslight. I mean, what do you do about that when they just try to throw everything back at you like that? And it's there's certain people you can remove from your life and there's others that you can't. And so when they try to paint this picture and just kind of gaslight, it's very frustrating.
It's very frustrating. It's really difficult because, again, there's only so much you can do. And the biggest thing, and again, I don't I don't even like labels like gaslighting. It took me a really long
Mm,
time to accept that I have been gaslighted.
right.
And it's like, well, then that puts it on me in a way. I let this happen to me.
Uh,
And so, and I mean that's true. I didn't stand up for myself in the way I should have. Now if someone tries to gaslight me, because it absolutely does still happen, I'm just very clear. I even had it in a recent dating experience where kept flipping everything around on me. And finally, I just said, we are not a match. That is it.
wow.
And he kind of was like, well, no, but no, there is no more. If you
Good for
continue to
you.
contact me, I will block you. We are not a match. And it's interesting how it really seems to happen that they really do. Well, but you did this, but you did this. I just said, I'm not doing this with you. We are not a match. Like that's, and you just have to sometimes block. So when you're in that situation, it sounds,
Hmm.
and it took me a really long time to get to that point too, but you either continue to subject yourself to that, and then all you're doing constantly over and over is setting your boundary, enforcing your boundary, setting your boundary, enforcing your boundary. And that's not a fun cycle to be in either. And so if you're in the situation where you have the opportunity to block the person, that's kind of become my, you don't actually get to have access to me anymore if this is what this relationship, whatever it is, friendship, relate, whatever the situation is, you don't get access to me anymore.
Yeah, good for you. Because if they're showing that in the beginning, it'll only continue to manifest, right? I mean, they're
Yep.
actually doing you a favor by showing their cards so soon, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think that's, if I look at my single life and my dating life, that's been my biggest progression is it doesn't take me 17 years to realize it anymore.
Mm,
Last time it took me 2 months. And then, well, I guess really the last time it took me less than 24 hours. And I just was like, nope, we are not a match. And same thing. They always come back and it's just I don't understand. Well, I do understand why, but again, this is why I want to normalize therapy. I truly believe that if everyone took the time to speak to a therapist, hire a coach, and really take responsibility for themselves in every and all situations. And I tell my daughter this all the time, no matter what someone else does, you have a responsibility in that outcome. So you do, even if it's, you can say, well, mom, it was completely not my fault. I'm
mm.
not disagreeing with that. But you can still look at it and go, okay, what was my part in this? And I think that that's something that so many of us don't do.
Yeah, how many times in relationships has it, matured to years, and you say to yourself, "Boy, I saw these red flags years ago, and I never did anything about it." And I remember talking to some single friends, and they're like, "Well," sometimes I'll hear this, "Well, he'll change once we move in together," or "She'll change once we have a baby." And these are, oh my goodness,
Unfortunately, a lot of us learn the hard way.
right?
And I am one of those people.
Mm,
And at the same time, I wouldn't change a thing in my journey to this point because I wouldn't be who I
mm,
am sitting here talking to you. I wouldn't be where I'm at in every stage of my life. And as much as there's been a lot of difficult pieces in there, and obviously I would love to have my mom and my brother back, but
sure.
I have, that's the one piece that there's just no control in. And so all I can do again is control myself. And in losing them, it continued, not only continued me on my path of growth, it changed my path of growth, which led me to being right here and who I am right now. And I like this, Nikki. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I like this Nikki too, by the way. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, I love your story. I love your podcast. So this is 16 years ago. My sister passed away in an auto accident. I get the call from my father. Never got a chance to say goodbye. We're at the funeral. I'm about to deliver eulogy, and some of her friends come up to me and say, "Do you know what people are saying about the car accident?" or something like that. And I say, "How dare you approach me with this, with her grieving parents right there? How dare you?" And you kind of make a watermark. And it was only 2 days before where I had to drive into the snow and tell my mother the news. So a new watermark in your life is kind of created. And then after that happens with nonsense of rumors, you have a milestone thinking there's about 4 or 5 people in my life who I care what they think about me. Everybody else can, go screw themselves. I bad or good, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. So it's very liberating when that happens. And unfortunately, it takes a bad thing sometimes for it to happen, but it's very liberating, and you try to live your life accordingly. Now, when you did, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Now, I want to launch into another subject.
I was just going to say, once you receive that phone call and an experience like that, the bar changes in your
Yeah,
life. The bar
absolutely.
for, like you're saying, the people you allow into your life and into your space, and also your definition of what's good and what's bad, right?
Right.
Like even my dad called me yesterday and he's like, I need to talk to you about something. I said, oh, is everything okay? And he said, well, no, not really. So me, with my experience, I'm
Uh-oh.
going to the absolute worst place. And so he proceeded to tell me, thankfully, he bruised his ribs. And that's, I mean, it's painful, but that's all it was. And I'm like, Dad,
Yeah.
I need you to lead with that because I'm not, my brain goes to dark places.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, because of your experience. Now, one of the one of the ways you combated or helped with this all this trauma was every morning you'd have a little green drink. Tell us about
Yes.
it.
Yeah, so I'd always had this green drink, and before it was physical health related, right? It's got all the superfoods and all the vegetables and everything that I probably don't eat enough of, so I'd mix my green powder in my drink, and that's what I drink in the morning. But after going through everything, for me, in experiencing grief and trauma, I stopped taking care of myself. That's the first thing.
Mm,
And it's a slow spiral down. And then I hit my rock bottom. And when I'm in my rock bottom, I started to realize, okay, I'm in my rock bottom now. I started to be able to see it. And then it was like, but how do I come out of this?
hmm,
And for me, it was literally as simple as getting up in the morning and starting with that green drink because it takes 30 seconds, but it started my day with me doing something for me. And so it shifted from just the physical benefit to it became all for my mental health. And still, with my brother, I really noticed it. That's when it really hit me that wow, this little green drink is kind of my kryptonite when I start going down, but it's also what saves me and brings me back up.
good for you. So that could be really anything for anybody. It could be exercise. It could be swinging a golf club. It could be, it really depends on what kind of shifts your perspective for the day.
Yeah, and it depends what you're going through as well, right? If it's
Mm,
when you're experiencing, a really high level of grief or trauma, it does for me, it needed to be something really small. I wanted to get back to the gym. Exercise has
mm,
always been my stress reliever. Getting outside has always been my stress reliever, but those were too overwhelming for me. I just did not have the capacity to do those in the place I was in. And so that really small thing, starting with something that small, and it seems so insignificant,
hmm,
but that was the springboard versus getting up, getting dressed, actually leaving my house and expending the energy to work out was just like, I can't do this. Like I
mm.
literally had a wall. I can't do this. Whereas a little green drink was, oh, I can do that. I can do that today. I'm going to do that right now. And then as I got into the habit of the little green drink again, suddenly it was, okay, I did that. What else can I do? And it almost gave me the confidence to add something else. And then they got bigger. Suddenly I was back at the gym. Well, it was COVID. So I was back. I built a gym in my basement, but
Hmm.
I found myself actually walking. Like it was too much for me to walk down my stairs and exercise. But with the little green drink and then the progression to the gym, and then I started walking my dog again, and everything just started building.
Does timing cure all wounds?
No, time will never heal my heart. I will love and miss my brother the same amount every day. Um, what time does is it allows us to understand our grief. So for me, I can feel it. So this morning I had a little bit of a moment, and I had one yesterday too. I don't know why. I don't know what it is right now that I'm really feeling and missing my mom and brother. Well, I do know why, but we don't have time for that. Um, but yeah, and I just, now I can feel the waves of my grief coming, and I know that I just need to take either 5 minutes or 30 seconds, or sometimes it's an hour, but I know what to do. So I can almost prepare myself when I start feeling the grief coming on. And I also know now that those waves are temporary. In the beginning, it was just constant wave after wave after wave, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't, it was like I was in the impact zone and I was drowning.
Wow.
And with my brother, it was like I was just sinking into darkness. I don't know how else to describe it. And so I still have those moments where I'm in the impact zone, or I'm drowning, or I'm sinking into the darkness. But again, I know that they're temporary. I know I'm going to come out the other side. I know I'm going to feel good again. Whereas in the beginning, I didn't. So that's what time has done for me, is just
Hmm.
to remind myself this is temporary. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to still love them. You're going to come out the other side. You're going to smile again. You're going to laugh again. You're going to feel good again.
Hmm. And you recommend therapy.
I do. I don't know where I would be on my journey, even going back 20, 30 years, to be
Hmm.
perfectly honest. My journey with therapy started as a child. My parents got divorced when I was young, and my mom, I come by my love of therapy, honestly. She took me and my brother to therapy when we were kids, and her and my dad were getting divorced. And then in college, I went through something really difficult, and the school actually made me go to counseling over it, or the college I was at. I've had another instance where um, the police actually were involved, and they made me go to therapy to help me through.
Wow.
So I really don't know where I would be on my journey without therapy and coaches. I believe that there's a place depending on your personality and your journey as to whether therapists or coaches are better. I tend to go back and forth. I'll have a coach, then I'll go back to my therapist, then I'll December I did both because I was struggling. But yeah, I think everybody, and I think for me, when I talk about normalizing therapy, I don't mean that we should go just when we're going through difficult things. I
Mm.
truly believe that we should all go. It doesn't need to be weekly or monthly, maybe it's quarterly. But I do think that the tools that therapists can provide us, and even that self awareness in flipping that lens around in every situation and going, okay, what's my part in this? What's my responsibility in this? What did I learn from this? Do I want this situation again in my life? Yes. Okay. No. Okay. Right. And so it's just having that conversation with someone who can give you the tools.
And as it's explained to me, a therapist kind of goes back in time and helps, whereas a coach purely looks forward and tries to bring you to the next level. Is that
I,
fair?
I think it depends on the therapist. My current therapist, she is fantastic. I came across her after my mom passed away. I actually went to her for my daughter because my daughter was really struggling with losing my mom, and she specializes in children, and somehow she now specializes in me.
Hmm.
She's been phenomenal, and she helps me work through the now. So we've acknowledged things that have happened in my past that may have contributed to who I am now, or why my brain has certain patterns, or why I go to certain places. Um, but we do that through what's happening in my life now. But yeah, I would agree in the sense that coaches, no, I I've had coaches that went way back further into my childhood than any
Ah,
therapist has.
really?
So again, I think it's individual to the therapist and coach that you're working with, and you,
Very.
and what
That's
you need.
good point. Yeah. So, are there any labels that are put onto you now that you like?
The label of being strong, I've always had a love hate relationship with. And so the
Mm,
label of being strong depends on where I'm at in my own mental health. So when I'm not feeling strong, if someone labels me strong, it's a negative. If
mm,
I'm feeling good and someone tells me I'm strong, I go, yeah, hell yeah, I am. So I kind of have a love hate with the label strong. Um, brave. Brave is probably my favorite label. And again, it's not something I think of myself as, but when someone says to me, you're actually really brave because you've done this. And even right now, I just did something that I feel is incredibly brave. And I've done like my solo trips where I went to
oh yeah.
Iceland by myself and I went
Mm,
to Portugal by myself. And those two trips were both on horseback because I love horses. And I just bought a horse, and that's why I have to be done at a certain time because my our new horse is being delivered today, and that
congratulations.
feels incredibly brave to me. So I think brave is probably my favorite right now.
Yeah, you went to Iceland and you for like 8 days. You rode a horse. You rode horses there. You still have friends there that by yourself. That I heard that account. Just you were pushing it off, and one day you had a glass of wine and up you went.
I did. I remember I checked my credit card statement the next day and I was like, yeah, okay, I did do that. Okay. No, then it's meant to be. I'm going to Iceland. And then it was just the deposit that I paid for on that. And then I got the like how I booked them a year in advance because they're big trips. And
Sure.
then I remember I got the email saying, here's your kind of first chance, you're going to need to pay for this. And I hit the button thinking it was going to convert the US dollars to Canadian so I could see what the conversion was going to look like. And it wasn't. It was paid for in full.
Oh wow.
And then I really went, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah, you're locked in now. Very
Yep.
now. What's the difference between a label and just somebody giving you a compliment? You're at a grocery store and you kind of move out of the way, and somebody says, "Oh, you're so kind."
Well, I think it depends on the relationship. So,
Mm,
who is saying it to me and how are they saying it to me? So, in one of my podcasts, I talk about the label of skinny because
mm,
as a child, I was constantly, you're so skinny. How do you find clothes to fit you? And literally, my mom was taking in size 00 pants for me. So like, it really was an issue. And so when people were saying those things to me, how do you find clothes? And do you even eat? And I ate a lot. So then it was, well, you must have a hollow leg. What do you do with it? Like, it was just, none of that was positive. When you're saying that to a young girl, and then society is telling us we have to look and be a certain way all the time. And for me, I was too skinny. And so now if someone says to me, "You're skinny," as a compliment, even if they mean it as a compliment, I'm still, that word will never be a compliment to me. So sometimes it's my reaction to a word or a label. Sometimes it's the other person's use and their judgment behind it. So even as an adult, people would say things to me with the word skinny where they used it. It was a form of judgment. They were coming at it from, "Oh, you're so skinny." And it was just
Like they're jealous?
like they're jealous, or it was a negative.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Again, my interpretation is in that. So depending on the
Right.
label, we have to remember that my experience that started when I was very young is very much in the word skinny.
Mm, very interesting. Generally speaking, is it more difficult for women or men with labels?
I don't think there is a more difficult. I think we face very different pressures. So
Mm,
for men, it's the, boys will be boys. Men don't cry. Boys don't cry. You're the strong one. You have to take care of everyone. That's a lot of pressure.
right.
That's a lot of different pressure. Women, we face pressure to look a certain way. We face pressure in the mental load that we carry. So, whether you're a working mom, a stay at home mom, it doesn't matter. The mental load that we carry is very real. And the pressure that men feel to provide, even if it's a two income household, like these pressures are so ingrained in us that even if they don't fit our situation, they're still there. So yeah, I think that both men and women are equally affected, just
Hmm.
different ways.
Just different ways, yeah. Should a man ever tell a woman to calm down or relax?
It's probably not recommended. Again, it depends on the situation. If
Mm,
let's say I drive up on a car accident and I'm having a panic attack because I can't handle what I'm seeing, and someone says,
mm,
"Nikki, I need you to calm down." That's going to be a lot. I'm going to go, "Yes, I do. Thank you." Versus if I'm expressing how I feel about something and I'm told, "You need to calm down." That's probably not going to go
ooh,
very well because you're not acknowledging what I'm saying.
yeah, you're right. These kind of triggers are often difficult to discover, and when they are, they could result in a sharp bite, and hopefully lesson learned and not to repeat.
If they're a really deep trigger for me, like I have a lot of them, and it has made dating very difficult because
Mm,
I will get triggered, and in the beginning, I would just take it out on this poor man, whoever I was dating at the time, and then after be like, "Oof, okay, that actually had nothing to do with you." And so now I can recognize that, and I can say, "Okay, this actually has me feeling a certain way, and I'm gonna take a step back because this has nothing to do with you. And so I'm gonna process this, and I'm going to figure out why this is triggering me, and then when I'm ready, I'll come back and we can talk about it." So again, it's that self-awareness.
yeah, yeah. I can remember. I have two daughters. I'm divorced as well, but we'd be going to go somewhere and I'd say, okay, 30 minutes, we're leaving, uh, 15 minutes, we're leaving 15 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay. Everybody in the car in 5 minutes. And it's just something I did. And, after divorce, I was dating and I did that. I said, okay, we're going to leave, personally, we're going to leave in about a half hour. Boy, that did not go over well. There was something that happened to her at a particular time and it was a sharp bite. And she didn't realize it was a trigger. And I just, learn your lesson, you move on.
Yeah. I've been extremely fortunate in that I have met a lot of amazing men in my dating journey, and they have been extremely patient with me, and they have called me out on things in a very kind and gentle way and said,
Ah,
"Is this actually me that you're upset with right now, or is this something else?"
hmm.
And they actually helped. There's 2, 3, maybe 4 of them in my single life, over the last, 6 years, and I'm forever grateful to them because they were so kind and gentle with me. And one of them early on, I mean, again, I live in Canada, Alberta. Our weather is crap in the winter, and his car wouldn't start. And he lived an hour and a half away, and we were driving another hour and a half to go to a fundraiser that was really, really important to me. And he's like, my car won't start. I'm really sorry. Like, I'm trying to, like, the tow truck's coming. I'm trying to get to you. And I just went to, you're lying. And something better came up that you wanted to do. And I just was like, no. And he's like, wait a second, what? And he was sending me pictures of the tow truck. And I'm like, that could have been from a year ago. I don't know when that's from.
Oh,
And it went
Nikki.
on. Oh, it went on and on. And he's like, are you actually breaking up with me over this? And I said, yes, I am. And he's like, well, I'm not letting you. And as we kind of worked through, he's like, you don't get to do that. Like, we're not at a stage where you just get to say I'm out. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't. And he's like, no. And so again, like, he did it in a very kind way. And I went, okay, this actually was me. How do I learn to trust again that people aren't lying to me? How do I learn to trust that he wants to be with me? I heard a lot in a very significant relationship that nobody else would ever want me. And I was lied to a
Mm,
lot. And yeah. And so in my head, deep down, nobody else would ever want me.
wow.
Yeah.
That's part of that gaslight, right? Part of that. Oh, it's horrible. It's so horrible. And I don't know if we mentioned this but I mean, you lost your mother, you lost your brother shortly after. There was a divorce before that as well. There was a lot of traumatic events that happened, and while that would drive anybody to the ground or not allow them to resurface, you saw therapy, you did a lot of things, you let time pass. But the big difference between you, Nick, is that you are voicing it now through Facebook, through this podcast, to help others. That's Do you think that's a path that others would go through? I mean, that's remarkable.
Well, I think so because since I've been doing this with my podcast, I keep getting asked to be on other podcasts, and a lot of
Right.
them are about grief, and a lot of them are about mental health, and a lot of them are about sharing our journeys. And so I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think everyone is meant to share their journey.
Mm,
I don't think everyone is meant to share their difficult moments. But those of us that are able to, I think that in a way that's our contribution to the world. Maybe I used to
mm.
always say, I want to do bigger things with my life. And I never knew what that meant. I knew I wanted to do something bigger, but again, I didn't know what that meant. And I kind of feel like this is my contribution. This is how I can help.
Good for you. Good for you. And is there a book in you?
I have been told by many, many, many people, please write a book. Please write a
Yeah.
book. Um, as soon as I have some time, I would
Right.
love to sit down and write a book. I just right now, literally this week is going to be a lot of work on my brother's estate. And my mom's is now wrapped up, but I'm working on my brother's stuff. And so I've had a lot on my plate. And, single mom,
Yeah.
I'm self-employed, so I run a business. All of my podcast, I have a lot of things going on.
Certainly.
But yeah, I do think one day I will find a way to put my words onto paper.
Well, I mean, even in some of your podcasts, when you're alone, it's obvious that you're not winging what you're saying. You've already put your thoughts to paper, and you're very concise in your messaging, and you're deliberate and you're precise. So it seems to me you're already doing it. You're doing a lot of journaling as well. It's just kind of collecting it all in a chapter format. My 2 cents.
My journals will be burned.
Ah,
I don't think I would share those with anyone. They have my deepest, darkest thoughts. And there have been some deep and dark thoughts over the last couple years and at different points in my life. And there's a lot of things I haven't spoken about on my podcast. And I don't know if I ever will. I think those are the parts that would be easier for me to put into a book.
hmm.
I don't know if I'm brave enough to actually say some of those out loud to on a public forum. Um, maybe that's in me in the future, but I think that's more of the stuff I would put in my book. I think if I ever were to write a book, I would really want it to be, I don't want to say uplifting because I don't feel like my journey has been uplifting. I feel like my journey has been just really, really difficult. And that's what I want to convey to people is it is okay to not be okay. And it is
Mm,
okay to feel like you're never going to come out of this place that you are. I want to be the one to tell you that you will, if you take the right steps and put yourself in front of the right people and surround yourself with the right people, you will find your way. But there's things you actually have to do. You can't just sit there and think one day you're going to wake up and go, okay, I'm better. At least for me, it definitely doesn't work that way.
yeah, very well said. Very well said. So on the on my podcast, we talk about discipline at one point or another. I lost a bunch of weight. People ask me how I did it. Discipline. You talk often, not often, but I heard you talk about kind of these platitudes about how are you really doesn't mean anything, and you know um, these kinds of things. But do you see yourself and your journey as a disciplined one?
It's interesting. I didn't until your podcast.
Hmm.
And in listening and learning about your podcast, I've always viewed it as choices. These were choices that I made, whether they took me down this path or this path. Now I'm on the path of these choices are improving and helping me grow. I've always looked at it as choices, but underneath those choices really is discipline because it
Hmm.
takes discipline to make those choices. So I think they're a lot more aligned than I realized when we first connected.
Oh, very interesting. Very complimentary. I get a decent amount of pushback on discipline and how some people say you really don't need discipline. You need compassion and love. And to that, I say, don't you need a degree of discipline for compassion and love? But I welcome the whole discussion.
I would agree with you. Compassion, especially in the world that we live in now, it takes work to have compassion. You have to,
Mm,
or I, again, when I say you, I'm really talking about me. I
right.
have to step back and go, okay, I disagree with this person wholeheartedly. I think their way of communication is awful
Mm,
and angry and negative. How am I going to approach this from a place of compassion? How am I going to express how I feel from a place of compassion? And that takes discipline. It is a whole lot easier to get on your laptop or phone and just go "Bleh," and be
mm,
angry
mm.
and jump into that space. So I think compassion, kindness, I think underneath every decision we make and everything we do is a decision, is a choice, is discipline.
Yeah, very well said. I agree. And when it comes to, you mentioned about, it's so easy these days. There's so many of these outlets wherever they may come from, political or wherever it may be, or pandemic, where their goal is to get you angry. If you get angry, you'll continue to watch, which makes them more money. So it's very easy to
Yeah.
get angry. It's safer to get angry because if you love, you might get hurt. So there's a little bit of risk in there, and uh, it's a terrible way to live, and you have to be careful. Somebody once mentioned the story of the First Nation, that the grandson says to the grandfather, is it easier to love or hate? And the grandfather says, well, there's one wolf that's gnarled and ripped hair and is angry and furious. And of course, there's the other one, which is loving, which is bushy hair and it's kind and it's meek. And the grandson says, well, which one lives? And the grandfather says, whichever one you feed.
Yes. I've had a lot of anger in my life, a lot of anger. And anger is still a very go-to emotion for me because anger protects
Mm,
me. And if I'm
mm,
angry, then people can't hurt me. So anger is protection. Anger, it is. It's a much easier way to live.
yeah.
It's not a healthier way to live. It's not a fulfilling way to live, but it's an easier way to live. And I think that's, again, it takes discipline to say, I'm going to choose to live my life this way.
Yeah, very, very well said. Yeah, I like that angle on discipline. It's the first time, and it's refreshing that I've heard it said that way. I've also heard things like, when you think of discipline, you think about disciplining your children. And I said, well, no, I don't think that, but please continue. And sometimes I get kind of a militant description of discipline, and certainly that is discipline, but it's not really. It's more about self-discipline, but I welcome the whole conversation.
Well, I think that goes back to our experience with the word discipline. If someone
Mm,
was raised in a military family, discipline is probably going to mean something very
right.
different than it does to someone. For me, my mom had rules, she had expectations. Did I get disciplined? Yes. I view it as there were consequences, right? I learned very early that I got to make my own choices, but there were consequences for those choices. And that's something I'm constantly trying to teach my daughter. Whatever choice you make, there is an outcome, whether that outcome is good or bad. You do have a role in that.
Mm.
So I don't care if it's picking what TV show you're going to watch tonight. There's an outcome of that. You're either going to feel good, you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, right? There's going to be something attached to every choice that you make. And sometimes it's a consequence and sometimes it's not. There's always an outcome. And again, it takes discipline to be able to recognize maybe what those outcomes could be beforehand. Discipline can mean so many different things.
I agree. Nicki, what motivates you?
Wow, I don't know if I've ever been asked that. What motivates me? Life motivates me. Feeling good motivates me. I like to feel good. And that's been a really, going back to the question about men, women, I feel as a woman that I've been told a lot of my life that I'm not allowed to want things. I'm not
Hmm.
allowed to go after things that I want because that's selfish. Moms take care of everybody else. Women take care of everybody else.
Hmm.
And again, men provide for like, again, there's always the two sides to this. I'm only speaking from my experience. And that's been probably my biggest sense of accomplishment these last few years is my solo trips and now buying this horse. These are things that make me feel good. And these are
Hmm.
things that I wanted and that I want. But the anxiety that has gone with each of them because I'm not supposed to want those
Wow.
things. And yeah, yeah, feeling good is my motivation.
That's a wonderful, wonderful answer. And how do you measure success?
Hmm. Are we talking my business, my personal life?
All the above.
All the above. In my business, I used to base it solely on numbers.
Revenue. Yeah.
And a very dear friend and colleague said to me one day, he said, Nikki, you know that you're more than your volume, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of went, what? No. It's like, yes, you are. We want you at the table for all of these reasons, not because of your volume. And I realized that they weren't inviting me to these, quarterly team leader meetings when I didn't have a team anymore. They weren't inviting me there because of my numbers. They were inviting me there because they valued what I had to say.
Hmm.
And again, I've been very fortunate with a lot of people in my life. So I've had people remind me of my value a lot. And I think that's, again, if now my definition of success, it's not the size of my house, it's not the car I drive. It was at one point. It's not the money in my bank account. It's, am I happy? Is my daughter happy? Do we laugh? Do
Hmm.
we cry? Do we feel our emotions? Are we living our best human experience? And that's success to me.
Very well said and quite noble. Well, Nikki Pike, thank you so much for your time today. My goodness, I look forward to this. I really enjoyed talking to you. I hope one day we get together, have a cup of coffee. Your podcast, Life as dot 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 with Nikki Pike. You know, the dot 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 certainly represents the labels. How can we get in touch with you? Tell us, please.
So I am on Facebook and Instagram right now. Life as our labels. And I do have just a website that has the links to my podcast, which is Life as Our Labels. And that's basically where I'm at right now. I'm hoping to put a little more into this year. I started this on a whim in the middle of a pandemic. So while I was working from home and homeschooling. So I'm hoping this year I've maybe got a little more time to put into my podcast.
Yeah, I really enjoy it, and I'll put all that in the show notes. Nikki, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with your horse today. Ride well. I don't know what's a good luck term you say with your horse. Travel well.
Ride well works.
Ride well. Yeah, ride well works. Yeah, yeah. Thanks again, Nikki. I appreciate it so much. You be well and have a safe winter.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciplined Conversations.